China is revamping its foreign investment law. Why now, and how will foreign businesses benefit? And the U.S. is using its power to crack down on Chinese companies, according to the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs. What's the latest in the escalating situation over the 5G race? Welcome to The Point, an opinion show coming to you from Beijing. I'm Li Xin. China is making life easier for foreign investors. The Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, the country's top legislature, began to review a draft foreign investment law during a two-day session that started Tuesday, the latest step in its ongoing efforts to further open up the country's economy. Once deliberations are complete, the new law will replace 3 existing laws on Chinese foreign joint ventures and wholly foreign-owned enterprises. Essentially, it aims to offer greater protection and more equal opportunities to foreign companies operating in China. The draft is open to public comments until late February before being submitted to an annual session of the top legislature at the beginning of March. Why did the laws need a revamp, and how significant are the changes in terms of reform and opening up? Joining me for the discussion in the Beijing studio are Professor Shan Wenhua, expert member of the Supreme People's Court International Commercial Expert Committee and a senior fellow at the Lauterpacht Center for International Law at the University of Cambridge, and Edward Lehman, managing director at Lehman, Lee and Xu LLP. Gentlemen, welcome to The Point. Edward, let me go to you first. First of all, before this new draft comes up, how is life for foreign businesses here in China?
You know, it's a mixed bag for foreign businesses. I mean, I think China has its challenges, but I think that this is the second largest economy in the world, and I think it's a place where people have to be, rather than it used to be a place where it was the workshop of the world and people were coming here for cheap labor. Now that's shifted into information age, and so I think that it's a challenge for foreign businesses, but it's being met head-on, and I think that these changes are positive for the foreign businesses.
Well, according to China's Justice Minister, when introducing the draft to lawmakers, Fu Zhenghua said the current laws could hardly catch up with the changing requirements in building a new system of open economy. What kind of requirements are changing? What are these new requirements we're talking about?
I think the Chinese domestic environment has been changed very rapidly, particularly after the new administration took office in 2013 and decided to start a reform version 2. Indeed, it should be called opening up and reform version 2. As a result, the foreign trade pilot zones was opened up in quite a few places, provinces in the country, in which the negative list management approach and the pre-establishment national treatment was already implemented. So there will be rapid changes in domestic practice as well as international treaty making, and the old law was quite outdated compared with those developments.
Well, I understand there are 3 different laws governing foreign businesses in China. When were these laws made? Do we have an idea? I mean, in the early 90s, or about what era were they representing?
The first law, the Sino-Foreign Equity Joint Venture Law, was promulgated first in 1979 as one of the very earliest laws for the opening up of the country.
Okay, so that says something about the kind of urgency that we need to put into this new law. Edward?
Sure. I mean, again, that started in 1979, then it's been a constant evolution. I think where people get mixed up is that if you're opening up a corporation in, say, in the UK or in the United States, you can incorporate and do anything that's not considered to be illegal. Okay, so it's kind of common law, common sense, whereas in the civil law system, they actually have buckets of things in which you can invest in. Those that are prohibited, those that are encouraged, and those that where you have to have a partner. And so it's a kind of a different approach. And so when you incorporate, so we think just opening up a company. And so I think for our viewers, it's very difficult for people to understand that The system is run in a central government way, and then they've got these buckets of investment. And now it used to be in 1979, you had to have equity, which meant that there was equality with regards to how much you put in and how much you could take out as an investor. And now there's less of these requirements.
Okay, exactly what the new law means then to foreign businesses operating in China. When?
Well, I think to start with, it will make their life much easier, because if you want to open up a company in China, now you find there's one law to start with. But in the past, you have to look carefully which law, which category you fall into.
Okay, in terms of protection, what kind of protection, more protection do they afford, can they now afford?
Yeah, I think first you have national treatment that is now in place. In the past, the Chinese government has been very hesitant in offering national treatment to foreign investors. It did not offer national treatment until 1986 in the Sino-Britain BIT, which was a very restricted one. In fact, it was one that is not implementable. Until earlier 21st century, China did not offer sort of full national treatment. I was talking about the post-establishment, but this time we have pre-establishment national treatment.
Okay, so
also offered.
Yeah, by national treatment, you mean foreign companies will be treated the same as Chinese companies. Is there
exactly.
But I understand there is also this thing called negative list, which means certain industries that the Chinese government is still not open to foreign businesses. So besides this negative list, all the other foreign companies can invest just as Chinese investors in the economy? Is
yes,
that what we're talking
exactly.
about? Okay, exactly. How easy is it going to be?
Right, yeah. I mean, should be. I mean, again, the negative list is foreigners cannot be creating, setting up their own armies or having nuclear bombs. Or I mean, these are lists that are obviously for national security and national protection. There's some that are a little bit foggy, and that would be in areas like education. So education has to be run by a Chinese national, for example. Media, I mean, this is where it gets into the gray area. So you've got variable interest enterprises, which is called the VIE, and that would be something like Alibaba. That's in the media, and that would be controlled strictly by Chinese nationals and by the ruling party. And they're really kind of taking a look. That was in 2015. They're taking a look at opening that up, and that's kind of really
I think
where
China has
in financial services.
Yeah, China has slowly been shrinking this negative list. I understand the number of items on that list has reduced from 63 to 48 at this moment. So more and more industries are being open to foreign enterprises. How do you look at the kind of process of opening more industries to foreign investors and giving them national treatment?
Well, obviously, it's very encouraging. It's a very attractive option that adopted by the Chinese government. As the country opens up, obviously, there will be more fields for foreign investors to invest in, and the economy would be boosted as well.
What other benefits will this law provide to foreign businesses? What other big changes will bring to foreign businesses besides national treatment? That will make a big difference to what they're enjoying now?
For instance, there is one provision in terms of the expropriation and the compensation. In the past, the law on expropriation only says that in case of expropriation, there will be corresponding compensation. The corresponding compensation can be considered as much lower than the fair and reasonable compensation standard adopted in this current law. Also, the most recent revision says that that compensation should be offered promptly.
Okay.
So in the timeliness, this has been a
so
great
in case the
improvement.
interests of foreign enterprises are infringed here in China, they can expect more reasonable and more timely compensation. That is, what does this new law mean to Chinese companies, though, to the Chinese economy?
Well, a first response from the Chinese companies might say that there will be more sort of fierce sort of competition from foreign investors. There will be more foreign investors to come in. But I think this because opening up to foreign investors comes, hand in hand with opening up to domestic private investors. So, and we well know that a few months ago, the government has taken many steps to encourage private investors to do business, to improve their business environment. So, indeed, they are going hand in hand. Because if we're talking about the national treatment for investors, you have to have a level playing field, a unified national treatment domestically.
Not just for foreign investors, but also for private investors as well. What kind of challenges do you foresee, Edward, in not just drafting this law, but also in the implementation of it? What will be your concern?
Okay, so the implementation is the tricky bit, which is, I mean, like, give an example. So with gay marriage, for example, in the United States, how do we know that that was permitted throughout the entire United States? Well, the Supreme Court makes a decision, says that that's permissible, and then every county and every city and every state knows how to do it. In China, they write the laws, policies, and they decide to implement them. There's this lag time, like you said. It's open until February, in which people can make comments. That's fantastic. But then the actual bureaucrats themselves don't know how to implement these things, and until there are Supreme Court interpretations and other types of interpretations which bring it forward. And so that's where the clueless comes in.
When you have been closely involved in the drafting, in the evolution of China's company laws, tell us a bit the insider story. Are foreign experts' opinions or scholars' opinion actively incorporated in the drafting process? Are there real changes when you hear these opinions?
Yeah, I think I have submitted a couple of opinions upon the consultation sort of requirements from different departments. First, by the Department of Commerce, that is the Ministry of Commerce, and then this time by the Legislative Council. And I participated in a major meeting, and our points have been well taken. Indeed, I was pleased to see some of the points raised in our latest legislative experts sort of meeting was already taken in the second reading, happened yesterday. So I think,
I agree. I think, they're open for the exchanges, and then they're also open. What I like about China, and people can criticize, but they actually take experiments. Experiments sometimes work, sometimes they don't, and then they move it around, and then they try to make it work. So I mean, that from a practical standpoint, not in the academic way.
Well,
but
you're
in
going
a
to take
way,
several steps. You can't expect everything to be in place in one step. I have to go very soon, but another question people have asked, is this law being rushed? You know, some people are saying, look, you're fast-tracking this law, so you didn't take enough deliberation. What is the consideration of China? Is it fast-tracking? Is it too fast?
Oh, I think it's not really too fast. The law was first published for consultation 3 years ago, more than 3 years ago, in 2015. There's a lot of time. And obviously, when it has to be deliberated, discussed at the National People's Congress, it has to go with a particular timing anyway. I think after 3 years of consultation, so many rounds of consultation with the experts and interest groups, stakeholders, I think it's not.
Well, not only that, I also think that brought it back too. I mean, 2015 they brought it back on the VIEs. They've made it more flexible, rather than less flexible.
Well, on the one hand, the outside world also has no patience when China isn't doing anything, right? When China is doing something, we're fast-tracking things. I don't know what is the perfect speed. Anyway, I have to wrap it up. Many thanks to my two guests, Professor Shan Wenhua, expert member of the Supreme People's Court International Commercial Expert Committee and senior fellow at the Lauterpacht Center for International Law at the University of Cambridge, and Edward Lehman, managing director at Lehman, Lee & Shu LLP. You have been watching The Point with me, Liu Xin. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, fresh developments in the Huawei case are unfolding. What's the latest in the US's case? Stay with us.